So Alec Baldwin is going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter, according to the Santa Fe District Attorney, along with the armorer that gave him the gun and loaded the bullet into the gun. I believe the first AD that handed him the gun they're pleading no contest or something, so I think that's kind of up in the air. But suffice to say that Alec Baldwin is a little cooked, and I get the sense as well on Twitter that people are a little surprised, and they don't really understand why. Like, there's a lot of people that dislike Alec Baldwin now because he pulled the trigger, and there's a lot of people that dislike the armorer because they essentially set Alec Baldwin up to pull the trigger. But ultimately, in my opinion, there's a very clear group of people, and there's some very clear characters that have been overlooked in this story that point very, very clearly towards responsibility. In fact, I'm so unsurprised that Alec Baldwin is being held liable that I posted about it on Twitter almost 2 years ago, and I gotta say, I kind of nailed it. I said, I don't necessarily think he is directly responsible, but as a producer, he could definitely be held liable if they find there was consistent negligence on the part of the production, which it sounds like there was, which there is evidence for considering the camera crew walked immediately before the shooting due to the gun safety concerns. Now, I need to correct that. They left the day before, but it was for gun safety concerns and a number of other safety concerns, which in my opinion is extremely significant. And that's what the part that I think people are completely overlooking. So today we're going to take a look at some interviews from Lane Looper, the first assistant camera that walked off the set the day before the shooting. And through that, I think it's going to become extremely obvious why this was probably Alec Baldwin's fault. And I think he deserves the punishment he's getting. And frankly, I think he deserves more than 5 years because ultimately he gets to walk away. Halyna doesn't get to walk away. So let's take a look at one of these interviews.
The night before that fatal shooting on the set of the movie Rust, the head of the camera department, Lane Looper, emailed production managers a resignation letter. The reasons he said he was quitting: delays in pay, complaints about housing, and safety concerns.
Oh my God. This honestly sounds like so many film productions that I've been on. It's just sort of like the curse of low budget production, which is why I'm honestly not surprised that somebody died on it. To be completely frank.
Looper writing, in my 10 years as a camera assistant, I've never worked on a show that cares so little for the safety of its crew.
So bear in mind that he sent this before the shooting happened. That's a quote from him the day before the shooting happened, which to me is extremely indicative of a lack of care from the production.
Policies, and also specifically expressing his concern for weapon safety on set, writing, during the filming of gunfights on this job, things are often played very fast and loose, and saying when he raised concerns about the lack of safety meetings with production, we are usually met with the same answers about not having enough time to complete the day.
See, now this to me is so insane. We are usually met with the same answers about not having enough time to complete the day if we rehearse. See, this is not a random happenstance. When production is saying the reason why we're playing so fast and loose is because we don't have enough time, well, that to me is like, that's a production issue, okay? That sounds like the producers, they overextended their crew. If your budget is a cup, then you can only fill it with so much stuff. You can only fill that cup with so many scenes and so many complicated camera setups before that cup starts to overflow. And regardless of how bad you want to get that scene done, the cup is going to overflow and something is going to go wrong. So to me, this is incredibly indicative of the fact that the production was extremely negligent. And I think everybody in film knows that, which is why I'm so shocked that somebody who's so experienced like Alec Baldwin would make such a mistake. When you don't have the budget, you downscale to make it realistic. You don't overextend your crew. That's just working smart in the film industry 101. That's just film industry 101. Anyway, let's get back to it.
But other crew members paint a different picture. Overnight, Alec Baldwin reposting comments made by the film's costume designer, who says concerns were heard and addressed, and we had several safety meetings, sometimes multiple per day.
So this costume designer claims that everything was all good in the hood when it comes to safety. I mean, in my opinion, that's obviously very clearly not true considering the fact that somebody got shot.
Producers of Rust telling ABC News Looper's allegations around safety are patently false, and saying that he had absolutely nothing to do with or knowledge of safety protocols.
See, this comment from production, another, God, this pisses me off so much, especially as somebody who's been told these types of things from production. I have some producers that I love working with. There's some producers that I would never work with again, specifically because of stuff like this. Things that they say that completely dismiss the safety concerns of your production. Specifically because here they say, he had absolutely nothing to do with knowledge of or safety protocols. He's the first AC. That's head of camera department. You're in charge of not only logistics, but you are in charge of everybody's safety. You're not only in charge of camera safety, but more than that, film is a dangerous industry. You put cameras over people's heads, you put heavy rigging over people's heads, you launch people through the air, you got people hanging off of cars. It's a dangerous industry, so everybody has to be in charge of safety. So the idea that the production would sit here and say that he had absolutely nothing to do with safety or knowledge of safety protocols is bullshit. It's absolute bullshit. It's just the production trying to discredit him because everybody knows that everyone is responsible for safety on set. Anyway.
We need some help. Our director and our camerawoman has been shot.
Authorities have identified the film's armorer, Hannah Gutierrez-Reed, seen in these Daily Mail images, and assistant director Dave Halls.
So one thing I should note about the armorer, which is funny, if we look at the YouTube attention graph here, everyone wants to click over to the armorer because, frankly, I think that's who everybody wants to hold responsible for all this. But like this armorer, if you guys don't remember from when the shooting happened, this armorer had a history of firearm negligence. Here's an article by Insider. The Rust armorer will be charged with involuntary manslaughter alongside Alec Baldwin. Oof, not a good look here. Hannah Gutierrez-Reed is the daughter of veteran Hollywood armorer Thel Reed. This is typical low-budget production stuff. Incompetent people getting in through nepotism, people who have a history of issues. Rust was Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's second film as head armorer. Given this, especially, as soon as there was a misfire on set, they should have gotten rid of her, in my opinion. It's like you get one chance and you're out, especially when people's lives are on the line. Not only was she a nepotism hire, she was completely inexperienced. She had a history of misfiring guns on set. Here, Sue Brambug, who worked as a key grip on The Old Way, told the Wrap that Hannah Gutierrez-Reed's behavior caused the film star Nicolas Cage to scream at her and storm off set as she fired a gun near the cast and crew for the second time in 3 days without warning. The second time. So, not only did this person misfire on the set of Rust days before, there was multiple safety concerns brought up. The camera assistant had to walk off because he was concerned about safety. The armorer also had a history of doing the exact same thing and mishandling firearms on other productions, and it was known. But production still chose to hire her, and in my opinion, that is such a production error, in my opinion, and it has so much less to do with the experience of that person and so much more to do with the experience of the producer, because an experienced producer can spot somebody who doesn't know what they're doing. Somebody who's not experienced as an armorer is going to take any opportunities they can get because they're trying to take any opportunities they can get. They don't have a lot of experience yet. So in my opinion, the responsibility still lies very, very heavily on the producers to hire people that are competent and that aren't going to put the safety of their crew at risk. And that's why I'm so personally angry at Alec Baldwin for this, because Alec Baldwin is part of the production team that's trying to discredit this first AC, who is saying there was very obvious signs that this person shouldn't have been handling firearms. And yet they still sit here and try and discredit him and say he's like doing it for clout. So in my opinion, like that's enough for me to say Alec Baldwin, because he's also behind these statements that are meant to discredit this first AC, who was just doing his job and did the right thing by leaving, by the way.
You know, you actually weren't on set the day of the shooting. You resigned the day before for several reasons, including safety concerns. Specify what those safety concerns were.
Well, what I put in my resignation letter was lax COVID policies, the housing situation driving to and from Albuquerque, and specifically gun safety, a lack of rehearsals, a lack of, preparing the crew for what we were doing that day.
You know, your claims there have been disputed by Therese Davis, who is a costume designer. She made a posting on Facebook, and I want to put it up on the screen right now. After a couple of accidental discharges, she said the guns were checked immediately afterwards. The discharges were announced on set and apologized for. She said, I was right there. We had several safety meetings, she said, sometimes multiple per day.
The costume designer here is trying to defend the production by saying, oh, it was just like one little mischarge. That's not something that should be happening. That's not an accident that should be occurring on a production at all. And I can understand from a production standpoint that there's an incentive to ignore those safety issues and continue shooting, and that's exactly what happened. When on a safe set, a proper set, I'm telling you, the standard would be to stop shooting and find somebody else. And the fact that this costume designer is trying to claim that that was chill, in my opinion, completely ruins their credibility. So this person is a goober. I think the armorer was a goober, and I also think that this person is a goober and doesn't care about safety as much as they claim.
Several safety meetings, she said, sometimes multiple per day.
Even the producers have said that they only had 3 safety meetings by the time I left the show, and that included the day of the shooting. I only personally remember 2 safety meetings that involved the entire crew. If there was a safety...
I'll say that every time I've been on set with a gun, if they want to make sure that the gun is clean, they'll open the chamber and they show multiple people around them, people that aren't even in their department, to show that there's nothing in the chamber. And they'll do it multiple times if they do multiple scenes. Obviously, that's not the same on every production. It should be obvious that the gun isn't loaded.
Was left out of it if there were any more than the 2.
The producers also said your claims are patently false. They say you had nothing to do with or knowledge of safety protocols, and they conclude it's truly awful to see some using this tragedy for personal gain. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, so there's no personal gain.
That's insane. That is insane. So here the producers are trying to discredit him now and claim that he's trying to do this for clout, which is kind of the standard response for like any accusation nowadays. Like if you don't have a good response to an accusation, you just say that the person's doing it for clout. That's exactly what the production is doing right now. This guy's career is probably hurting more that he's talking about it. Genuinely. This to some producers, ruffling feathers like this, I'm sure this hurts his career more than it helps it. I don't see any way that this guy's doing it for clout at all, in my opinion.
And this for me, I'm kind of sticking my neck out here. I don't want to be on camera.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a pretty unique perspective in that it's important that I be a part of safety as the head of the camera department for protecting the camera operators, knowing what the shot is. You know, it's very important that I play a role in safety. I actually had to take classes in Los Angeles in order to get my union card.
So
exactly.
Where was the break?
Exactly. And in my opinion, the producers that are trying to claim that he's doing this for clout, it's like, that to me is also just so indicative of the disingenuous nature of the production side. And you got to remember that the production side is Alec Baldwin. All these statements coming out from producers trying to discredit him and saying that he is doing this for clout in some way, or saying that they did have a bunch of safety meetings and they weren't being unsafe, that is Alec Baldwin. Those people are talking to Alec Baldwin when they're releasing those statements. That's Alec Baldwin versus this guy trying to clear his name, when in my opinion, this guy is being totally honest. And I think it's very evident by the fact that somebody got shot on set, and the fact that this guy quit the day before it happened due to the ridiculous conditions on the set. I think it's plainly obvious that the producers, and by extension, well, not even by extension, directly, that Alec Baldwin was being insanely negligent, and that's what led to the death of Halyna Hutchins.
Down here in your mind, was it the assistant director? Was it the armorer?
I think with Rust, it was a perfect storm of, you know, the armor, the assistant director, the culture that was on set, the rushing. It was everything.
See here, he's saying it was everything. And in my opinion, I think he's trying to walk it back from directly accusing Alec Baldwin, because in terms of what he's saying here, when it comes to like everything, the atmosphere on set, the rushing, that is entirely dictated by the producers. The producers can make sure that doesn't happen.
Everything had to fall into place perfectly for this 1 in a trillion thing to happen.
So it really was still 1 in a trillion in your mind?
It's a very rare thing to happen. In the film industry, we have these things called safety bulletins that are basically an owner's manual for how to run a safe set. And they were ignored and not attached to the call sheets, which they're supposed to be. And unfortunately, that's what led to a breakdown here.
Again, the producers do dispute that part of it. What do you know about this claim that there was...
Of course the producers dispute that part of it, because the producers have no incentive to acknowledge a lack of safety on set. If you specifically address a safety concern and production decides to just continue filming anyway or not address the safety concern, your power is to leave the production. That is your only power. So in my opinion, it's still completely on Alec Baldwin and the production in this case. The idea that the production would sit here and try and say that it's not their responsibility somehow, it's like, yo, someone got shot on your production. Of course it's your fault. Of course it's your fault. Of course. So there's another interview that he did that we're going to watch on CNN. Let's check that out.
The idea that someone who's an armorer could load dummy bullets and actually be loading live rounds and not know it, even if they say they inspected the rounds? Why that?
I mean, that would, in my opinion, that's sheer negligence. It's not paying attention to what you're doing. It's absolutely your responsibility as the armorer to make sure that you're, properly loading the firearm and inspecting it before and after, and also not loading the firearm until right before you're going to shoot. You see, we actually have instructions for that. We have,
And he's very right? Like, there is obviously obvious safety protocols, but as he gets to, those safety protocols weren't included in the call sheet, and that's something that those producers should have flagged. That's something that Alec Baldwin, when those concerns brought up, he should have put his foot down as the most experienced person on that production, but as the producer.
Industry-wide safety bulletins that specifically spell this out.
Now, you left the job right before because of safety concerns. I want you to talk about it in the context of the response from the Rust producers, okay? Mr. Looper's allegations around budget and safety are false, patently. He had absolutely nothing to do with or knowledge of safety protocols or budgets. Safety is always the #1 priority on our films, and it's truly awful to see some using this tragedy for personal gain. You make the case of why you had legit safety concerns.
Mm-hmm. Chris, to borrow a phrase from the producers, first of all, it's patently false that I'm not responsible for safety, because it's everybody's responsibility on set for safety. Everyone from the production assistants all the way up to the top producers. So that's completely out the window in my book. As far as budgets and things like that go, that whole argument, it doesn't matter, because what happened is safety concerns were overlooked consistently, and it led to somebody dying on a movie set. And that's the problem here, in my opinion.
And I completely agree. And what he's really trying to say, again, like we said, I was trying to say in the last interview, what he's really trying to say here, he's trying to point the finger back at the producers. And who's the main producer? It's Alec Baldwin. This guy, the guy who was on set, the guy who left production. In my opinion, I think he also believes that this is Alec Baldwin's responsibility. I also think that this was Alec Baldwin's responsibility as the producer. And I think it's just a point of irony that he was the one to pull the trigger. Ultimately, that gun was going to go off, whether or not it was a gun, because ignoring safety issues, working fast and loose is essentially, you're begging for somebody to get hurt or killed on your production. And that's what I think the main issue is here. I don't think the main issue has anything to do with gun control. I don't think it has as much to do with the armorer as people are giving it credit. I really think it has to do with the unwillingness to hire proper people to do gun stuff. Like, if you're going to do gun stuff on your production, you better make sure it's somebody who doesn't have a history of negligence and misfiring on set. It's your responsibility to hire people that are capable, but it's also your responsibility to respond and listen when people have safety concerns, especially when it has to do with people that you hired. Because if you are hiring people that are incompetent and people on your set are telling you, hey, this incompetent person that you hired is causing safety issues, there's no reason why we should have had this armorer still around if they were misfiring on set, as the costume designer said. Like, there's no reason why they should have continued to be on that production. Ultimately, what I see here is a negligent production with a negligent producer that's trying to put the blame on essentially anybody that they can point the finger at, and discrediting people that are talking about the legitimate safety concerns that they had on set. You shouldn't have to worry about your life being at risk when you're on set. As a cinematographer, risking your life is not part of being on set. Dangerous situations are part of set, but that's why you have so much crew and you have so much gear, is to mitigate disasters and take on unexpected challenges. It's not to work as fast as you possibly can to get this movie done as fast as you possibly can for as cheap as you possibly can. Maybe if you're a producer that doesn't care about your crew, that's what it's about. But whatever. What do I know? I'm just a first AC. Anyway, that's it.